brother? It's time for another episode of Birds with Friends. Just a trio of feathery brethren weathering any season to see the Eagles eat teams like Scrammy's top with cheese. It's Philadelphia. Bo, Sheila, and Zach kicking it. Cooler than 3 penguins till Zach runs off with his valet keys. He's a real nuanced goose. Pull up a branch, get loose. It's time for some juice on some Birds with Friends. The early bird gets the worm, but prefers getting turned like a turn on some Birds with Friends. Bo, Sheila, and Zach coming at you with stats and things flapping their wings.
Statistics, they can be like bathing suits. What
Finish it up. Sometimes you gotta take them off.
What the hell?
What they show is revealing, but what they conceal is vital, right? So,
hello, everybody, and welcome to Birds with Friends on a, Thursday afternoon. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman, Marissa Morris here to talk about the latest going on with the Eagles. We heard from Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni yesterday. The Eagles have their defensive coordinator interviewing for head coaching opportunities. We will discuss both of those things. We're going to play a new game, Zach, that because Sheila's not here, we can take the opportunity to play a game that is only for the sickest of the sickos, in a game we like to call Quack to the Future. We'll get to that at the end. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about Dane Brugger's mock draft. We've got a lot to talk about, Zach. How are you? And, knowing that you are like a perpetual overachiever, have you already finished your off-season to-do list that you were given from the wife once the season was over?
I haven't finished that yet, but in the process of it, there's a lot of what's the expression that like people who've been married for 20 years say, the honey-do list, right? There's a lot of
honey-do.
Yeah, I do it willingly and happily, right? But no, I'm excited for this podcast. As I got on
that list.
What was on the top of the list?
What's the top?
It's like plans that had been put off in terms of like, we need to get together with these people and these people and these people, that kind of thing. Yeah. So, but
you're trying to postpone them still. You don't want to get together with those people.
I like getting together with the two
those
of you.
People. You don't want to get together with those people.
No. So as we got on, Marissa said, "It seems like it's been so long, right?" And it's Thursday. Our podcast was on Sunday night, but we were on such a regular schedule that going 3 nights without it. And the other thing I should say on that list is during the off season, as I've talked about in the past, it's my time to catch up on modern entertainment, right? So we've been watching the show Yellow Jackets.
Oh, people like Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, so I had to catch up to her, and now I've caught up to her, and we're a few episodes done away from the finale. Yeah, it's solid. I'd rather watch Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets than this, but it's
that's a drop.
Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets last night, going down to my Deeks.
That's why I brought it up there. Yeah. How about Texas A&M over Kentucky last night? Big win there.
I only pay attention to one team. Let's be fair. Okay. Yeah. Marissa, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be back with you guys. Like I said, I feel like it's been forever, and it's only been 4 days.
We know you missed us.
And I missed the sickos.
We have lots of people inquiring about Shield. He's just feeling a little under the weather. We send him our love. I think he's actually just upset and still laughing about Zach calling me on the Jalen Reagor take from the podcast previous. So,
by the way,
he's entertaining himself with that.
Kentucky won. Texas A&M covered. That's the distinction there. Okay.
Oh, and you won a lot of Lechuga on that bad boy?
Well, we have a listener, Anthony B, who suggested that one. So I'm sorry, Anthony D, rather, who suggested that one.
Anthony Davis?
No. But
this is an inside joke between you and one listener.
No,
that's usually my kind of joke.
Anyways, let's get on with the Eagles. There's a lot going on here.
Okay, well, we did for about 35 minutes yesterday. Heard from Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman. You know, Howie Roseman only talks a few times a year. This is one of our few opportunities to talk to him publicly, and it was another virtual press conference, which means everybody just asks one question. You go around. You see what little nuggets you can pull, and let's find out what nuggets there were as we send it over to the stone cold newsman himself. Don't get hit by a car, Zach.
That's not. The Philadelphia Eagles are going into the offseason with the plans of having Jalen Hurts as their quarterback for 2022. That was the big takeaway from Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni on Wednesday. There are many other nuggets of information that we can discuss, but as far as news items, that was the biggest one. And of course, nothing is ironclad in the sense, if you remember a year ago, this news item would have included Howie Roseman considering Carson Wentz a part of his hand, like a finger on his hand. And for all I know, Howie Roseman still has all his fingers intact. So you never know how.
Maybe he was Count Rugen. Maybe he had 6 to begin with.
Who was that? Antonio Alfonseca? Was
That's
that
right. I believe he had 24 digits. We had 6 on each.
Oh, okay. Oh, on his toes as
appendage.
well. Okay,
I
gotcha.
believe so.
And then Jonathan Gannon's been a busy person. The Eagles defensive coordinator has interviewed so far with the Houston Texans and the Denver Broncos. I believe the Minnesota Vikings still to go. And speaking of the Minnesota Vikings, they interviewed 2 members of the Eagles front office for their general manager job. That was Brandon Brown and Catherine Raich, as we discussed on the podcast last week. So anyways, those are both that's the news items, but there's a lot from Howie and Nick that we can discuss.
Okay, so I think let's have this Jalen Hurts conversation. But before we do that, why don't we just tick off the other small bits of news that came from that press conference? Brandon Brooks, still sort of a mystery, right? What's going on there?
Still a mystery as far as his status. There was
And what happened to this season, right?
Exactly. Now, Howie Roseman said it was important for him that he finished the year healthy. He hasn't had an off season in the past 3 years, right? Because he's been coming off season-ending injuries the past 3 years. So perhaps it was the type of thing they just wanted to get him to the finish line healthy, and he wanted to have these months healthy. But clearly, he's been out since week 2 for an injury that wasn't expected to be a season-ending injury. So, anyways, they said, they were kind of non-committal. They just talked about his health. We'll see. If you look at it from a financial perspective, it's hard to allocate that percentage of your cap space for someone who started 2 games during the past 2 years. And
Yes.
He would seem to be a post June 1st possibility if they were to cut him, or if I saw there was a report or something out yesterday about him retiring. I have not heard that yet to be the case, but it's certainly something to monitor.
No surprise, Brandon Graham, they're bringing back. There really was no choice there. That's how his contract is set up, and them potentially losing Derek Barnett means that he's definitely coming back. There was one other veteran who was mentioned. Who was that?
Fletcher Cox.
Fletcher Cox. Yeah, that's right. And that was interesting. Not a full commitment, right? He acknowledged that there were trade discussions during the season.
Yes. Acknowledged there were trade discussions. Said Fletcher was in the loop on those, and said that they'll always think about what's best for the team, but they still think Fletcher can take over games. That's another player who, from a cap perspective, doesn't make sense for them to move on from him, but they were willing to at least talk about it from a trade, in the trade market in October, November. So if you think if they were willing to trade him then it means they were willing to absorb the cap hit if necessary.
Jalen Reagor, Nick Sirianni gave a very long answer about how happy he is about the wide receiver position, going in depth on his enforcer, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and the importance of Greg Ward in the room. But he and Howie Roseman acknowledged that Jalen Reagor has not been as good as they were hoping. He called him, Sirianni did, the number 3 receiver, and Quez Watkins the number 2 receiver. What did you make of that? I guess show of confidence, lack of show of confidence in Reagor.
A few things there. I thought Howie Roseman to acknowledge they expected more production, which is obvious, right? But I thought he was fairly pointed as much as he is in these cases. that they recognized the underachievement here. They weren't making excuses for him.
I think you can just like you can contrast the Jalen Hurts answer to the Carson Wentz answer, you can probably contrast the Rager answer to the way he spoke about Andre Dillard last offseason, right?
That's a good point. Yes.
Which was much more supportive and much more like we still think we have a very good player.
Well said. That's a very good example there. And then for Nick Sirianni to make a clear delineation between Quez Watkins as the number 2 and Jalen Rager as the number 3. And then I was in the car this morning. I took the kids to school, and I was Flex taking the kids to school.
So did I in the car this morning, actually. Okay. It was raining,
Yeah. And was listening to Nick Sirianni on WIP, and he was talking about Rager, and he said Rager has to understand he's not the number 1 receiver like he's been at TCU and in high school, and he's not going to get 10 targets a game. So he has to make the most of what comes to him. Something I'm paraphrasing here, something of that nature. But that's relevant because if you want to read between the lines, maybe like behind the scenes, Jalen Rager thinks he should be more involved in the offense and isn't the I was using the example of Nelson Aguilar back in 2017, 16 going into 17. So same stage in his career. And frankly, I think Nelson was more of an underachiever through 2 years than
Really?
Jalen Rager's been. Yeah, I mean, Nelson Aguilar, they had the bench. Like they had that they inactivated.
If they had someone else to play, the Eagles would have benched Jalen Rager.
Okay, all right, maybe so. But
I mean, feel like Aguilar at least had flashes of being able to get open.
Well, 2016 was really bad. He couldn't even line up correctly, right? They had a touchdown taken off the board because he didn't line up correctly, and then he had 2 drops in that same game, and the wide receivers were worse in 16 than they were this year. But that and by the way, that offseason they did everything they could to protect themselves from Aguilar having a big role. They signed Alshon Jeffrey, they signed Torrey Smith. Jordan Matthews at that time was coming off a few productive seasons. And Nelson went into the offseason as the number 4 guy. But if you listen to what they said, they were saying Nelson, he works really hard. He does everything right. There's a lot of talent there. It's up to Mike Rowe as the new wide receivers coach. It's up to Mike Rowe to figure out how to get this out of him. And that spring and summer, Nelson was outstanding to the point that they traded Jordan Matthews because they said they had to get this guy on the field. And
they got Ronald Darby.
but behind the scenes, I think they looked at Nelson as far as, they looked at Nelson differently than they looked at Jalen Rager. So I'm not in the building every day. I was back then. I can't say what this staff thinks about Rager specifically. There's a lot that I'm hoping to learn more of this offseason. But I interpreted the comments also as saying to Jalen Rager, we're not happy with you right now.
I think the difference between the two of them and their underachievement in the first 2 seasons is that, like I said, Aguilar, at least his mistakes on the field were all mental. He looked like the player they thought they had drafted physically, right? Whereas with Rager, I feel like he has never shown the elite athleticism they thought they were getting on the field. I also think it's this is an interesting conversation about, how Sirianni talks about before the season, every position coach, has a conversation with every player about their role on the team.
Yes.
And I think that that makes sense to a degree, but it can get thorny. If it's a guy like Rager and you're telling him, your job is to be a 3, but what makes a wide receiver good is having that pathological idea that you're the best player on the field, and to tamp that down a little bit. I wonder how that affects some guys.
That's interesting, and maybe so.
What if you told Deshaun Jackson when he comes in that you're just here to stretch the field, you're just the number 2?
Sure, but if you are, I don't want to reflect anything that I don't know to be the case. I was going to say if you're pouting, I'm sorry, but if you're pouting, if you're frustrated, and I don't know if that's the case. But what I can say is in Rager's public comments to us, I don't want to use the term disillusioned, but it was like he would take umbrage to any characterization that he was under, that he was underachieving or anything of that nature. And I understand you need to have a certain amount of self-confidence, but you also need to have a certain amount of self-awareness as well. And
that's fair.
If he walks away from the season thinking that the fans are too hard,
I made a couple sweet catches in training camp.
Yeah, I didn't get my opportunity. The way they used me, things of that nature. Then I think that would be more of a concern.
Yeah, I think it is nowhere near a guarantee that he will be on the team next year. Okay. Speaking of which, why don't we pivot to the Jalen Hurts conversation? And I think if you had asked us before the press conference what they were going to say, we probably would have predicted something like this. This was the most sensible thing to do. It is still the most likely option, the most likely scenario that Jalen Hurts will return as the starting quarterback in 2022. And so because that's the case, you have to, publicly proceed with like a full backing. You're also signaling to the league that you consider him a starting caliber quarterback for like leverage in trade discussions. You're a little bit less desperate for a quarterback that way. And also if you enter into something where maybe Hurts is going the other direction in a deal, his value to you is as a starting caliber quarterback. But I thought, like, reading between the lines a little bit, again, as you said, contrasted with the fingers on the hands from last year. It's not like we can take it purely at face value. But I thought it was maybe like a touch or a smidge more convincing than just sort of, public declaration.
You're right. You're right. I thought they went a little farther than, frankly, I expected. I thought they were going to keep that door cracked open a little more than they did. Now, that door is always open, right? The easiest thing for you to say, if let's say hypothetically you traded for Russell Wilson, the easiest thing for you to say is we had every intention of having Jalen Hurts as our starting quarterback. When you have an opportunity to get something like,
quarterback.
Yeah, they called. It's our obligation to the fan base to listen, right?
Right.
But
and in the same press conference, Howie says it's our job to look at everybody and everything. Right.
But I also look, Howie, for whatever people say about him, he's shrewd in terms of, like, he's been doing this for a long time. He knows that's going to be the first question in the press conference, right? And he knows his answer to that's going to be very important. And I think he probably had a sense of the marketplace going into this offseason. He probably has a sense of their evaluation of Hurts, like how they think of him relative to the quarterback draft class, and then probably what the price would be for these high profile guys, and what the price would, what the interest from these high. And when I say high profile guys, I'm saying Wilson and Watson and Rodgers, let's say. And like, if there's interest in that sense in those guys even coming to Philadelphia, and Bo and I have talked off the air about this. I can't see the Eagles. I've seen two different places that's mentioned Kirk Cousins as like a possibility for the Eagles. I can't see the Eagles going with this, like, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, like that
Derek Carr.
Exactly. The only route I could see is that bona fide, like perennial Pro Bowl or franchise quarterback guy, because that you can explain. If you go and you traded for Kirk Cousins, it's like, wait, how can we even take what you said at face value ever again? Right.
It also doesn't make sense. Like,
yes,
like a Kirk Cousins is not a
franchise changing player,
a tide raising all boats, or whatever the saying is, right? Like,
yes,
Russell Wilson, if he is Russell Wilson, and we will have time to debate that, whether he is declining or not. But if he is like Hall of Fame Russell Wilson, he does give them a chance to, like, potentially compete if a few people make leaps, like for the top of the league, right? Kirk Cousins does not. He costs money. Like the whole reason to have Jalen Hurts right now and give him an extra year is because he's on the third year of his rookie contract. You buy into the upside, and then you make a decision next offseason. It makes no sense at all to bring in a guy like a placeholder who is like basically the same sort of level as player as Jalen Hurts was this season.
Yeah, I agree there. I think Russell Wilson is that's Peyton Manning going to the Broncos in 2013. That's taking a playoff team with Tim Tebow there.
Not necessarily, but they hope that would be the theory behind it, right? That would be.
I'm saying, yeah, and that's my personal opinion. Like he changes the trajectory of your franchise, in my personal opinion, and we can discuss that another day. But I think that when Howie Roseman went up there, he had a sense of the marketplace. He had a sense of what's possible. He had a sense of what's probable. And I think the most probable outcome here, and it's certainly not a bad outcome, is Jalen Hurts to be your starting quarterback. Now, I don't want to shift the conversation away, but that also ties into what Jalen Hurts needs to do to get better, because we can all agree he needs to get better. And one thing,
probably his worst game of the year in the playoffs.
And he really harped on two things the other day. He harped on, first off, when he was asked specifically about, what he needs to do to improve as a passer. He said that going back to his freshman year at Alabama, he's had a different play caller every year, and he thinks being in the same system will help him a lot, right? And so we'll see. And then the other thing, even for somebody who rejected any question about his ankle, was insulted that you would bring it up. He comes to the post-game press conference with the boot on, right? Okay. And it certainly was, I imagine it was necessary, but it was very clear. I think he wanted us to see him with the boot. And then he made clear how much that affected him late in the year. Like, his answer during the season was, "Hey, we're winning," right? And now he's saying he couldn't be freaky.
Right. Well, now I can be honest with you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. He wasn't able to be freaky in the last month of the year.
Unlike your hotel neighbors.
I think the context is different here, but who knows, right? No. So I imagine a healthier Jalen Hurts with another year in this offense and a full offseason, working with the coaching staff. Perhaps that can be beneficial. The one thing I'll say is, and this is no disrespect to the Eagles coaching staff, like, he's worked with high level coaches now for 5 years, right? He's dating back to Alabama, at Oklahoma, even last year, Doug Peterson. That's he said no shortage.
Marty.
He said no. It's not like he was in a Pop Warner system and now all of a sudden it's like, welcome to the NFL. We're gonna get our hands on you now. But I thought the best point came from.
I think there is I think there is at the same time something to that it might be nice for him to have 2 years in a row, and also it's overrated probably. I think.
But what Nick Sirianni said, I thought Sirianni gave a good answer in that in his when he was talking about what needs to be done to be more accurate, he said it's not just your fundamentals. It's knowing where you're going with the ball, setting your feet and throwing it, right? And so perhaps another year in the offense will will make him a touch faster in making these decisions, allow him to get his feet underneath him.
Yeah, I mean, if he is back as the quarterback next year, that's the whole kit and caboodle for next season is how much better is he as a processor, do the reps build up and expedite his ability to get the ball out. I think that's everything. So now what about in the draft, Zach? Do you feel like these comments made you feel even more convinced that they will not take a quarterback in the draft, at the top of the draft at least?
Yes. Yes. I think for a few reasons. I think you put it well last year too, when I was saying, this is a really good draft class. They're in the top 10. They really need to think about it. And you said you don't know if they're ready to kind of hitch their wagon to a guy. And I thought that was a really good point because, I've had people bring up to me, why is the conversation different about Jalen Hurts than it was about Mac Jones? Well, the difference is also the organizational investment. When you take a guy in the first round of the draft, you're committing 2-3 years to that player. Now, I understand there's, the Josh Rosen situation. There's always examples which are the exceptions. But by and large, if you invest a first round pick in a quarterback, he's your guy for 2-3 years before you're even thinking about moving on. And we saw that with Carson Wentz, right? Part of the reason why you choose him over Nick Foles is the organizational investment that you have in him. So I think the Eagles don't have the same organizational investment into Jalen Hurts. If they were to spend a first round pick on a quarterback, then you're committing to that guy being your starter and building at some point and building around him. And I don't know if they're ready to do that yet, especially with anyone in this draft class.
Now, I wouldn't rule it out, but I would say they're not going to stay at 15 and take a quarterback. You know what I mean? If there's a quarterback they like, I think they're going to go up and get him. Because
really?
if you evaluate this quarterback class, right, and you decide that one of them is worth, like you think is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts, is worth bringing in to be your franchise quarterback, you don't wait and sit there at 15. You got to go up and get him. And I feel like waiting precludes drafting a quarterback, because if you love a guy that much that you like him more than Jalen Hurts, then you shouldn't be waiting. You have the ammo, go up and get him. You know what I mean?
I do. And there's kind of two ways of looking at this. First, there's the 2000,
because they're not in a situation to just take a quarterback just to take one.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to say. The story you wrote about the Eagles moving up in the 2016 draft, one of the things that jumped out to me there was that going into the Senior Bowl, they didn't think these guys were going to be 1-2, right? It was the type of thing where throughout the draft process, quarterbacks tend to move up the board. The flip side is 2013 shows, just because you want a quarterback, if there's not a quarterback there that you love, you don't take them. And that was the year where actually, that was Geno Smith, EJ Manuel. Even the next year, 2014,
EJ Manuel, that was so good.
Yeah, in 2014, it was Blake Bortles, it was Teddy Bridgewater, Derek Carr, I think Kaepernick, right? So I could be wrong. No, Manziel was Manziel was 14. So anyway, so that's a way of saying that that just because you want a quarterback, or you might need a quarterback, or you have the inventory, you have to love the guy to take him. Well,
and it's also why they don't know if they're going to take a quarterback yet, because if they're going to take a quarterback, it's going to take full buy-in from Sirianni, and he's got to fall in love with the guy, and he hasn't begun that process yet. So it's certainly possible that could happen with one of these prospects. I think it's too early to say, but I think, like I said, I can't imagine them staying there and taking a quarterback.
But Jimmy Kemsky asked the question yesterday, and it was a good one. You don't know if you're going to have another year with these types of resources, right? Where you have 3 first-round picks.
They have to do the work. They have to do the work on these guys.
But that's why, and we'll talk about it from now until April, it behooves them, and it's easier said than done, but to get draft inventory for next year, to kick the can down the road on Jalen Hurts, and have the option if Hurts does not take the leap next year, to go up and trade for a Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, or if the Clemson quarterback can figure it out, and things always change. So
yeah,
we'll see.
And Howie did say openly that they are willing to try to get future assets with these picks. I also think there's a big picture case or conversation about having these 3 picks so close together that it makes sense to move out from one of them, because the likelihood of getting guys who have fallen on your board at each of those picks is not very high. So it makes sense. I mean, I would be shocked if they pick at 15, 16, and 19. I don't know.
I would be shocked too. I think the odds are better that they don't than they do.
Right.
But I think the odds are better that they move down and add inventory
I
than
agree.
move up and try to get a guy.
I think quarterback is the only. I mean, other than like a 2-pick move up or something like that. But I think significantly, I think it's much more likely they move down.
And as Dane Brugler pointed out, this is a year where it's not the elite players at the top that you've seen in the past, and the way you know that is in his mock drafts now there have been 2 different number 1 picks, right? So it's not a year where you're like, all right, player X is your franchise changing player, but it seems to be a year where there's more depth in the middle. So
why don't we quickly go through that mock that Dane had?
Okay.
You wrote about it today. He had
yes.
the Iowa center Tyler Linderbaum at
Mm-hmm.
at 15, the Clemson corner Andrew Booth at 16, and then your boy, the Purdue defensive end George Karlaftis.
Yeah, he's not my
19.
boy, but go on. Yeah,
And then,
I asked Kerrigan about him. He's not my boy.
Yeah, that makes him your boy. He was on your mind. And then Wyoming linebacker Chad Muma.
Yes.
In the second round. What did you make?
So for full disclosure, or not full disclosure, to pump it up, you can check it out on The Athletic. I wrote why each pick makes sense, why each pick doesn't make sense. The Linderbaum pick would surprise me for a few reasons.
I think that would be disappointing.
Because first off, like we've discussed this, between Landon Dickerson and Isaac Sayamalu, they have options at center. If you just look, 3 of the 4 centers in the Pro Bowl this year, there's 2 6th-round picks and a 5th-round pick. I don't need to tell Marissa, center's a position that you can find late and develop, right? So Jeff Stoutland has a history of developing linemen. But if you think that he can be like a all-pro player, then you consider it. It's just I think they would probably look elsewhere there. Andrew
Howie
Booth
was asked about like taking other positions in the first round, and it was interesting. I thought this was an interesting answer because he didn't say like, that's just how the board has fallen. We take the best player on the board. Like that's what we do. He said like, we're going to continue building the team the way we build the team. Like we have a philosophy, which is, I mean, he's saying what he's showing basically, but I thought,
based on what I know, the only time that they were real, there were a few linebackers over the years that like they thought had real good value.
Kenneth Murray.
It's easy to say this after the fact. Luke Kuechly was a player that like in 2012, that might've been Kuechly over Fletcher Cox.
Christian McCaffrey they liked, right?
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey they really liked in 2016 or 17. I'm sorry, 2017. But they're always if it's equal, they'll always go with the lineman or the corner or the receiver. Yeah, they're not gonna go with the linebacker or the interior lineman. Let's say.
I think corner is the one where like they haven't done it under Howie, but I think that is like that they would be willing to. Like that's.
I think that's been more circumstantial.
Yeah. I think that's a position that they value.
And so I do think that there's a chance, whether it's Nakobe Dean, whether it's Devin Lloyd, that they could take one of those guys this year because they have the volume of picks there. But if you're on the board and you have, let's say Nakobe Dean has the same range of grade as
like Karlaftis.
Then you're leaning toward the edge rusher, you're leaning toward the corner, and I don't fault them for that. Now I think the corner that he has going to the Eagles, Andrew Booth, that would make sense. Andrew Booth checks a lot of boxes athletically, checks a lot of boxes in terms of production. Was a real good player at Clemson.
Do we know, is he related to John Wilkes?
I haven't asked anyone about this, but
okay.
I would have a strong doubt.
Okay.
I've seen Andrew Booth. I don't believe Andrew Booth is related to John Wilkes Booth, but
it's a question that needs to be asked.
At the combine, you're more than welcome to ask that question. Get in the front and say, are you related to John Wilkes Booth? Yes. It's funny. Andrew Booth is that'd be an interesting one. And I imagine there's going to be a lot of pre-draft juice among Eagles fans for Ahmad Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati, who was really productive, 6'3".
How much is there juice there just because his nickname is Sauce? I mean, that's got to be like 80% of the love, right?
Yeah, he was on a good he was in a good
South.
program there. But there's some interesting corners in this draft. And I think the Eagles will come out of the first round with either a corner or a safety. It's a better corner draft than safety draft. Then the third one he has is Karlaftis, and Karlaftis is going to be an interesting conversation going into the draft because
I
doesn't
think
have
it'd be fun because then I could do a Greek impression.
well he's very much like that's a big part of his branding. What's your Greek? I actually don't want to ask what your Greek impression is. I want to have a job after this. So, Karlaftis doesn't have prolific sack production.
I'll come on with just chest hair popping out, eating feta, spanakopita.
Yeah, his best sack production came as a freshman in 2019 when he had 7.5 sacks. He's only had 5 sacks the past 2 years. I don't have athletic testing on him yet, obviously, but Dane was saying he's not like a long-armed guy, and so but he's real powerful, and he's gonna be one who, like, the analytics, it's gonna be interesting on, because from what I've read, his pass rush production in terms of pressures is really high, right? But
he may not test super well.
Yeah, but his sacks aren't. So it's going to be interesting to see. Bo's going to like him because he's one of the younger guys in the draft. He's going to be 21 throughout his entire rookie season, and was a huge prospect coming out. Started, was a day one starter at Purdue, so a pedigreed player. And
the thing about all these like pass rushing stats with kids in college coming out and how they translate, like you look at the 3-cone, you look at production pressures, they're so like subjective. The thing is, it's all Greek to me.
Oh, okay. I see what you're doing there. Okay. And it's the next defensive end that Dane had coming off his board was Jermaine Johnson from Florida State, who you'd consider like a late blooming guy. He had 12 sacks last year at Florida State, transferred, was at Georgia earlier in his career, but like he's one who has more sack production and is expected to test better athletically. We'll see. But there's some interesting players there, and it's a real interesting year. And I would put Karlaftis in this group for, these like 275, 280 pound DNs who make sense as like 3-4 DNs, but are they 4-3 edge guys? I don't want to say Milton Williams types, but that type of player.
Types.
Yeah, that's a good one there. And, the player at Georgia, Trayvon Walker's like that. There's a prospect from Houston like that. So curious to see how the Eagles evaluate that.
I got a lot of work to do. I'm excited.
Okay. And then in the second round, he had Chad Muma from Wyoming. I don't know if it's Muma or Mama. Got to be honest with you, did not watch a lot of Wyoming this year.
He's a Brugger favorite. Brugger loves him.
A lot of production, good size.
Logan Wilson too. Loves those Wyoming linebackers.
How about the Wyoming quarterback, Josh Allen? That one turned out pretty good. Coached by Carson Wentz's old coach. What's that?
Capital of Wyoming is?
Is it Cheyenne?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
You think if they draft, what they would do in Philadelphia if they finally draft a linebacker in the first round and it's Chad Muma?
What would they do?
They'd have a Mama's parade, a Muma parade.
I like that.
Chad Mama.
Okay.
The Mama's parade. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. So we'll see. We'll see. But there's some other linebackers, obviously, who
we're going 40 minutes on the opening segment here. This is
yeah. I'll say I'm a nerd for mock drafts. I suppose I can end the sentence that I'm a nerd, but I'm a nerd for mock drafts. And I did something at the end of the piece where I did alternative picks just based on Dane's board. So like who was there at each pick.
Like more than him. Interesting.
No, not that. Just as like a thought exercise, like you do your shadow draft.
Yeah. Like
based on who's there. And I had Nakobe Dean, Jermaine Johnson, Kyer Elam, and then Lewis Sign. Now I'll say the one thing that mine's obviously it's leaning toward bigger programs that I see on Saturdays. Dane's a much better. I mean, Dane does this every single day, so he knows these guys much better than I do, and I tend to always lean toward the bigger school guys anyway. So, but it was fun to read the mock draft and make sure to check out Dane's piece, and all Dane's coverage is outstanding.
All right, let's take a little break. Come back on the other side. Talk a little JG Johnny Gannon. What's going on that front?
This podcast is brought to you by DirecTV Stream. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows, you're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, I wanted to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings you your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package.
Wow, what a read, Marissa.
I forgot to send you guys that one beforehand, so I had to take the copy
Dynamic.
that I read. So yeah, DirecTV
Fantastic.
Stream. Thanks for sponsoring. Yeah.
All right, back on Birds with Friends. Zach, what is the latest on Jonathan Gannon? Has he interviewed for all three of the openings that he's linked to so far?
I don't believe he's interviewed for the Vikings yet. I believe it's been Houston and Denver so far.
Do you think they're having that? Do you think they're having that interview on the steps of the art museum?
Because the
Vikings fans come.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a reach, that one, Bo.
I mean, they're all.
But the one with the Broncos was in Philly, from what I understand.
Well, that's what I was. Yeah, since they're coming to him.
Yes.
I have two things that I'd like to talk about on the Gannon front.
Let's hear.
I guess the first thing is like the meritocracy aspect of it. I like Jonathan Gannon. I like talking to him. We've talked about like he's a guy who can win a room. You can convince me that he will be a better head coach than a defensive coordinator. But I do not understand at all this, like his juice as a candidate here. Like based on merit, there are so many more qualified candidates. And I know that the job of a head coach is different than the job of a defensive coordinator. But like just for a one-to-one comparison, you've got your boy, DeMeco Ryans, who is also a first-year defensive coordinator, also a like dynamic personality. His defense is actually good. And like he played in the league. He's got, I think, one interview. Okay. He's black. Jonathan Gannon is white. Like all of these, like Todd Bowles or even offensively, Byron Leftwich or Eric Bieniemy, all these guys, like it's insane to me that Jonathan Gannon is like might get a head coaching job. And it's nothing against him. I think he's really smart. Part of the problem is I am like biased in the same way that the owners are. Like, you know, I'm a white guy. I talk to him. I think, oh wow, what a smart guy. But that's not how the people should be hired. That should not be the process. And it's hard to imagine being a minority candidate and seeing Jonathan Gannon getting 3 interviews and thinking that there's like any fairness in the process at all.
All right. Yeah, here I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think that I think the problem goes beyond like Jonathan Gannon. Like if you're in the hiring process and you want to talk to Jonathan Gannon because you've either worked with him before and you think this guy's gonna be a really good head coach, or you've heard in the business that he's gonna be a really good head coach, then yeah, you should absolutely. You're doing a disservice, frankly, to your job by not talking to him. But he's not the only person you're talking to, obviously, right? As Shield wrote in his list here, cast a wide net, speak to as many people as you can, and don't
That's
speak to
true.
people that you know. And the 3 interviews that he's had are places that he has a connection either with the organization or the person making the hire. And like,
that's another problem. But go ahead.
yes. So don't just talk to people, but the flip side to that is I would be hypocritical if I were to say, like, just look at the defensive stats, right? Because I say you're not hiring a resume, you're hiring a person, right? You're hiring someone for the qualities that they have to be a head coach. Mike Tomlin was a defensive coordinator for what, a year, 2 years, in Minnesota, and they brought him in to talk to him. I believe the other candidates then were Russ Grimm and Ken Wisenhunt, and they hired Mike Tomlin, and 15 years later, right, he's never had a losing season. You're not hiring someone because of the resume. You're hiring someone because of what he or one day she could do as a head coach. So if you're in that position and you believe that Jonathan Gannon has the leadership qualities and the personality qualities and the organizational qualities to be a good head coach, you should talk to him, right? But it shouldn't, so I don't want to hold that against him, but it should be a wide ranging search. And I agree, like, based on resume alone, and I mean, DeMeco Ryans, who for all those reasons you said, that would be more appealing to me. DeMeco, I mean,
it's a direct one-to-one comparison.
In my 10 years covering the team, there has not been a more there are few people who are more respected than DeMeco, number one. And I think of all the people that I've coached, he's the one who his coaches and his teammates would say that person would make the best head coach. From like a leadership perspective, DeMeco was revered. He was revered by teammates. He was revered by coaches. I said last year when they were interviewing Jared Mayo, if you're going to talk to Jared Mayo, you need to talk to DeMeco Ryans. And that's and by the way, I would be part of the problem in that case because I'm going with someone that I know as opposed to someone that I don't, right? So, but yeah, I would cast a really wide net. I wouldn't have a decision made before you start. And I think it's unfair to Jonathan, like to make him the face of a problem that is that goes well beyond Gannon.
I don't mean I don't mean to cast aspersions at him, and it's not like he should like turn down these interviews.
Yeah.
I just it's very difficult for me to imagine if Jonathan Gannon had his exact resume, but his skin color was different, that he would be getting 3 interviews.
Well, but if he had the same resume and he worked
like
with
the 25th best defense this year.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the same resume in that if he worked with George Payton in Minnesota and he was in the Vikings organization and him and Nick Caserio have a background, right? That would then that makes sense. But based on like the production of his defense alone and the way his defense played, no, it's hard to justify that. And that's what I said. Like if you're a fan of the team, if he is hired, it's reasonable to be skeptical. But I keep going back to if you're hiring someone based purely on like their offense or their defense's production, then I don't know if that's a one-to-one translation to how they're going to be as a head coach. It's leadership, it's personality, it's organizational. A matter of fact, that one thing that I hear from first-time coaches is how little of their job is like spent on football relative to all the other things they have to deal with, right? And that's a big chunk of it. But I'm very curious to see what happens in this hiring cycle. I think,
and again, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, there absolutely should be more minority coaches, not just for representation purposes, but because like just the best coaches, the best 32 people for jobs, like or whatever percentage is, can all like look. It's just they don't all look the same. So
exactly.
yeah, exactly. So it's not just representation; it's finding the best coach, and that's why you need to cast a really wide net.
It should be a like a market advantage, like because just the odds are that you're better off hiring like what. There's only one black head coach right now, right? Is Tomlin the only black head coach?
Yes. Now there's a lot of seats. There's 7 jobs open. Okay. So yeah.
There's a better chance you're going to get a good head coach from like the second best black head coach than the like 25th best white guy. Right? I mean, it's just odds.
Yeah.
Odds are right.
But interestingly, like I think that the characterization you gave, that would apply more to like hiring Nick Sirianni a year ago, and Nick did the best of than Gannon, because I think.
Well, again, I don't think that Jonathan Gannon would be a bad head coach necessarily. I think he could be a very good head coach. That's not really the problem.
And so what I'm saying is, I think one of the issues that comes up in coaching, and we talked about this a year ago, is owners or people who are making the decision to hire the coach. They're looking at offensive minded coaches. Okay. And, and so that, just because
Jonathan Gannon gave up such a good completion percentage.
No. So for reasons that are unfair and needs to change, right? More quarterback coaches tend to be white, more offensive coordinators tend to be white. And so the pipeline needs to change, like organically there, from from having more minority coaches as quarterback coaches and as offensive coordinators. But if you're hiring Jonathan Gannon, you're going against the grain, and you're hiring a defensive coach, right? You're hiring a younger defensive coach who doesn't have this long resume that a lot of defensive coaches have. But Nick Sirianni was like, that's like, all right, we're hiring the offensive coordinator of a coach that we knew, right? So that kind of fits the profile. And Sirianni, by the way, like we said, he did the best of any first-year head coach, and totally. I think he's done a really good job. So this is all a way of saying that you need to talk to as many people as possible and hire the best person. But I believe I believe that the best person isn't always going to look the way that they've been hired to look like.
Well, so, and it's all like part and parcel of the same thing, like the league setting aside John Gruden as if he was like some lone wolf black sheep, like the only guy who talks like this in the league, like instead of representative of the entire culture. And it stops there, and we pretend. And, meanwhile, like we just let the guy who was like his right-hand man for 20 years get to be the new head coach. And Jay Gruden's getting interviews with the Panthers. Like, give me a break. This like, this pretend, like, put the wool over our eyes, we don't see what's going on is ridiculous. Anyway, I think there is.
I didn't know. By the way, when you texted you wanted to have a conversation on Jonathan Gannon,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to railroad you.
I thought we were talking about, like, based on my insight into him, like how's he, what's the appeal? How's he going to come off in interviews? I didn't know we were going down this way, but I do enjoy this conversation.
So I think there's an interesting Eagles specific angle to this as well, which is, I guess, like, to what degree do you think that the Eagles' defensive philosophy this season was Jonathan Gannon's philosophy versus something that the Eagles organization was trying to buy into? And I think it's also part of the conversation of, Howie Roseman was talking yesterday about how important it is for, the scouting staff and the GM to be picking players for the coaching staff, right? Mm-hmm. And if you went into last year's draft or like last year's offseason filling players for Jonathan Gannon's defense and he's gone in a year, like, was that a waste? Shouldn't you instead be picking the best players, and it's the coach's job to find the right way to use those guys? And I know that that's probably wishful thinking, and it probably needs to be somewhere in between. But I also think that if you are, generally speaking, a general manager has more job security than the head coach, right? So if the GM is able to pin bad picks on well, the coaches wanted him, I just gave them who they wanted, that doesn't really create the right incentives either. But I'm curious to see if Jonathan Gannon does get a job, do the Eagles continue to run this similar thing? Did they just want some Brandon Staley type guy who was going to, play bend don't break, or did they actually just want Jonathan Gannon? And would they then bring in, a Vic Fangio and run something completely different?
That's a good point. So a few things there. First off, yeah, I think part of it was Jonathan Gannon, right? Jonathan Gannon's name came up from different coaches that they interviewed, and I think they were intrigued by adding Gannon as the coordinator, and Gannon has a certain way of playing, and
I should say Sirianni too. Is it also the philosophy that Sirianni wants?
And I can understand it philosophically. I'm of the opinion you need to get to the quarterback. You need to get down the court. I don't think these two things are mutually exclusive, right? I think you can prevent the big play and still pressure the quarterback. I don't think you need to be this blitz happy group. Their defensive linemen need to play better. I think there was a talent issue there too. Look, we've discussed it. The last 8 first and second round picks that the Eagles have made have been offensive players. The reason why we're talking about them drafting potentially 3 defensive players in the first round is because there is a vacuum of young talent, or a void of young talent on the defensive depth chart. And it was Jonathan Gannon in his first press conference when he said, show me my players and I'll tell you what my defense is. Right. Now, part of that was just him saying it. He tried to fit this group into playing this way, and he did make adjustments, as you pointed out in your Darius Slay story. Right. But overall, I do think that this is philosophically, they were interested in Jonathan Gannon, and I think Sirianni liked the way he played. But if Gannon got a different job, then I could see them making adjustments based on their personnel. And I think I don't think they would hire a scheme. I think they would hire a defensive coordinator. And by the way, to circle back to our previous conversation, saying, well, let's replace Jonathan Gannon with established defensive coordinator X, right? And Vic Fangio, by all indications, is one of the best, defensive minds out there. But that's part of the problem too, right? Let's just recycle the same, perhaps Denard Wilson is an outstanding defensive coordinator. Perhaps, you go on down the list, right? So, but no, I'm curious to see if Gannon leaves, what direction they go. And I don't think they should be married to the scheme. I think they should find the best coordinator for their defense. And perhaps that's recycling someone like Gus Bradley, or like you said, Vic Fangio, or
Gus Bradley.
Yeah. But maybe it's finding the next Jonathan Gannon, the next D'Amico Ryans, or someone like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We take one more break, and then we'll be back on the other side with maybe the most deranged game that we've ever played on Birds with Friends.
Which is saying something.
Food that's fast does not have to be fast food. Freshly offers quality meals without the hard work. Their meals are designed by nutritionists, cooked by chefs, then delivered fresh. Other meal deliveries need to be prepped and cooked, but Freshly is ready to eat in 3 minutes. No one wants to spend an hour cooking after a rough day at work or an infuriating commute. At the end of a long day, takeout doesn't have to be your only option for an easy dinner. Whether it's for you or your whole family, Freshly gives you convenience, flavor, and nutrition. I saw that box of Freshly outside my door, and I was thinking, guess what? I don't need to worry about preparing dinner. I'm going to have a meal in mere minutes. Get delicious, chef-made, nutrient-packed meals delivered straight to your door. No cooking required. Fresh and never frozen, ready to heat and enjoy in just 3 minutes. Use the Freshly website or app to find meals that fit your lifestyle with plans that work for your dietary needs, preferences, tastes, and family size. Choose from over 50 nutritionist designed entrees like their classic steak peppercorn, multi-serve sides like their masterful mac and cheese, or their new line of plant-based meals. Stop stressing about dinner. Right now, Freshly is offering our listeners $40 off your first 2 orders when you go to freshly.com/birds. That's $40 off at freshly.com/birds.
It's winter, which means both football and basketball are in full swing. And for many of us, there's no better way to enjoy the games than by having some skin in the game, which is why BetMGM remains the exclusive betting partner of The Athletic. And as a fan of The Athletic, you can bet $10 to win $150 plus a free 3-month subscription or extension to your subscription with The Athletic when you bet with BetMGM using our promo code. Just sign up at betmgm.com and use the promo code TheAthleticPod, all one word, at checkout to take advantage of this special offer from the king of sportsbooks. That's bet $10 to win $150 plus 3 months free from The Athletic at betmgm.com and using the promo code TheAthleticPod at checkout. New customer offer. Visit betmgm.com for terms and conditions. The king of sportsbooks from the king of the beats.
21 years of age or older to wager. Arizona, Colorado, Washington, D.C., Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia only. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, Washington, D.C., Nevada, Wyoming, and Virginia, 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-GAMBLER in Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Call or text the Tennessee Red Line 800-889-9789 in Tennessee or call 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana.
All right. Back on Birds with Friends. Sheil, if you're listening and you've made it this far, you can turn this episode off. You are not going to want to listen to the last segment here. Zach, yesterday the Eagles signed 11 players from their practice squad to futures contracts. You and I are going to rank them 1 to 11 in the likelihood that we think they have a chance to be on the week 1 53-man roster next year. Have you done so?
I did the top of my list. Yes, and then I'll just fill in the bottom. I mean,
I was thinking we were going to start from the bottom.
Oh, really? Okay.
Start at 11.
Why?
You weren't kidding with this game, Bo.
I told you. This is a game for you, me, and Denise.
I can't tell you the difference between.
You have to.
All right, fine. I'll give you my last one. I'll give you my last one. Okay, I'll go with 11.
Okay, we'll say it at the same time. Ready?
Yep.
Number 11. 1, 2, 3. Matt Leo.
Okay, yes. Sorry, Matt. Sorry, Matt.
Poor Matt Leo.
Does the international exemption extend next year?
I believe he gets to be on the practice squad 1 more year. I could be wrong. Maybe it was 2 years and now it's put up or shut up time.
Okay.
Maybe that's right. Maybe he's on the hook now. All right, are you ready for number 10?
Yes.
Okay, number 10. And this is, of course, Quack to the Future is the name of this game. Exciting to debut a new game on Birds with Friends. Number 10. 3, 2, 1. Deion Kane.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Nice.
Great minds.
Same page. Now, This is not the detestable former Superman star, Dean Kane. This is Deion.
What made him
Kane.
detestable?
Oh, he's like a big MAGA guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He's complaining about how liberal Hollywood is and stuff like that. Okay.
I used to enjoy watching that. I remember as a kid that was on Sunday nights. I
actually enjoyed that show too.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid. Yeah.
Lois Lane and Clark Kent. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, those are still the main people in the Superman
No, but that
world.
was the show. The show was called. It was like Superman with Lois Lane and Clark Kent or something.
Okay, number 9.
Here. Someone said Claire Flaxman.
The Adventures of Lois and Clark. There you go.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Number 9. Are you ready for number 9? Do you have number 9 on your mind?
Yes.
Okay. Ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1. Noah
Christian Ellis.
Tangiai.
Okay.
Ooh. Maybe this is bad. Maybe this is bad for us to reveal at the same time because now you will rate Noah Tangiai lower than you would have otherwise.
Honestly, I don't think I'm going to adjust my list.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
But this is what I'm saying. I don't feel so strongly that Christian Ellis should be over Noah Tangiai on
Okay,
this
well,
list. So I'm
You
not
should have
dying
thought
on that
about it
hill.
more.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Now we move to number 8. Number
Are we
8.
still doing the same time thing or?
Yeah, we've already started.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Number 8. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Craig
Cameron
James.
Malveaux.
Okay.
Ooh. Oh, Marissa, blown away. I mean, Cameron Malveaux is like 28 years old. Number 7. Number 7. Are you ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1. Craig
Noah
James.
Tangiai. Okay.
That's this is an all-time Birds with Friends moment for me. Okay. All right, you ready for number 6?
Yes.
Number 6. 3, 2, 1. Marvin
Cameron
Wilson.
Malveaux. All right.
All right, you ready for number 5?
I actually have Marvin Wilson higher than you. Or a lot higher than you. This is interesting. Okay. Let's go.
Number 5. 3, 2, 1. Christian
Marvin
Ellis.
Wilson. Okay.
You said you had him a lot higher than me. You had him one spot.
I was joking there. Yes. Okay.
I think you're actually right. Maybe I should have flipped those two.
Okay.
I just think it's easier to make it a linebacker.
Okay.
All right, but that sounds like that means we have the same top 4, not in the same order necessarily, but the same top 4.
This is so suspenseful.
interesting. For the Eagles fans who are really plugged in on the futures contracts, who do I need to know? Who's going to be interesting to follow over the offseason? These 4 guys. These are the top 4. These are the 4 horsemen of the 2022 futures contract players. Zach.
By the way, I just want to say 2 years ago, okay, I did like 20 predictions for 2020. And there was one on that list that Bo gave me so much grief for. And I think this was on a podcast that we can actually go back and find it. And one of them was one player signed to a futures contract is going to make the team. And Bo was like, that prediction, why? How's a futures contract guy going to make the team? Like, do you really think it's going to happen? And now we're doing a whole segment on this. Yes.
Someone sent an email to the Birds with Friends Gmail calling you and Shield to account for you especially for drumming up the Rager rankings because he said that it goes against the entire ethos of the show, which is that as Shield says, you say something, nobody remembers it, and then you move on. So
that's Shields. That's not the entire ethos of the show. I never signed a contract that says you put things out there that have your name on it and you don't stand by it. Right now, I do think your opinion can change. My big pet peeve, by the way, in the internet era, that makes me sound so old, right? Is there's this notion that if you have one opinion, that's your opinion forever. Right.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, you thought this guy was not going to be good. Well, your information changed. Right.
Yeah, you didn't know that right before the draft, I dropped Rager way down in my rankings.
Exactly. So, all right. So we're in our top 4 now. Okay.
Top 4. Are you ready?
Yep.
The 4 players who we think are most likely to make the opening week 1 53-man roster. Number 4. Are you ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Jaden Maiden.
Okay.
Ooh, interesting. You go Mac McCain. I go Jaden Maiden. Number 3. 3, 2, 1. Mac McCain.
Maiden.
That's very interesting. Now, McCain, of course, the Eagles had a chance to keep him around. They cut him twice, kept him around. But there's so many people shuffling young corners at that young corner position. Maybe he's a chance to impress in the preseason.
By the way, what did you call Jared Maiden? You called him Jaden Maiden?
Jaden Maiden, yeah.
Isn't it Jared?
I mean, on his birth certificate, but as far as I'm concerned, it's Jaden Maiden.
Okay.
Okay. Number 2, very exciting.
Okay.
Number 2, the second most likely player to make the opening day roster, 3, 2, 1. Jacoby
Coyote
Stevens.
Awashika.
Wow. Shots fired, Zach. You
You
go
see-
Coyote Awashika 2. I go Coyote Awashika 1. And you go Jacoby Stevens 1. Wow.
So I just want to say, I texted Bo when Bo texted me about this game. I wrote to him, I respect your craftiness in getting us to talk about Coyote Awashika. That this entire segment was basically for Bo to say Coyote Awashika has a chance to make the team next year.
No, I thought it was going to be really good drama.
Okay.
I thought that this was an opportunity to talk about something with Shield gone that he wouldn't let us talk about otherwise. And I mean, I think that Coyote Awashika is the nuts.
So I'll give 30 seconds on why I disagreed. Because I actually thought about putting Awashika here on top of the list. They're deep with offensive linemen. They don't have a lot of old, now Brandon Brooks, I'm assuming he's not going to be on the.
I think it's a reasonable case to make.
Yeah, but if they draft an interior guy, it makes it harder for Awashika to make the team. They don't have a lot of free agents in that group unless they don't bring Nate Herbig back. Whereas Jacoby Stevens, I think he has, juice as a special teams guy. I actually like the way he played on special teams late in the year. And the linebackers aren't like most they're it's not an entrenched group right now. So I can make an argument for Jacoby Stevens being on the team.
Now, tough draw. And Marissa can speak to this because I know this happened to Michael, but to be one of the guys on the practice squad who is not signed to a futures contract, what a blow! What a blow to the self-esteem.
Michael actually told when the season ended last week, he got together with some of his friends and he was telling them this whole story about when he was in Jacksonville and his agent was like pushing the AAF and he was like, nah, I just want to sign the futures contract, whatever. And he was like, no, like you should do the AAF, that whole thing. And then his agent was like, well, there is no futures contract. So you're doing the AAF pretty much. And Michael was like totally like taken back by it. So his offensive line coach ended up getting fired there. And, it ended up all working out. But yeah, it is a pretty big blow, especially when you think, you were with the team for most of the season or stuff like that. So
then he went to Seattle and the pandemic hit.
Yeah. Wild.
Is there a story we can read about this journey?
Yes, actually, if you want to check it out, at theathletic.com, the great Bo Wulf wrote an amazing story on his journey back in and out of the league.
And what does Michael Dunn have planned for the offseason?
Writing his vows, hopefully. Helping me plan a wedding over this next month.
What do you think? How much do you think I could slip to Michael to get him to begin his vows with hello, everybody?
If you helped him write the rest, I guarantee he would easily start with that.
And true to Bo Wulf, there'd be 3 people in the audience who would understand that joke. So that's a Bo joke right there.
Connor Hughes might get up and walk out because he's so hurt.
That's great. We got to make this happen. Michael, I know you're listening.
By the way, for our audience, so we've done this whole segment. We should explain what a futures contract is. Okay. Because I do think that's important to point out. If you're not on the active roster at the end of the season, okay, then you sign a futures contract, which basically has you on the team throughout the offseason. So you're with the team at the start of the offseason program. You'll go to training camp, that type of thing. You're eligible if you're not on a contract at the end of the year because practice squad deals expire at the end of the season. At the end of the regular season. Yeah. They're a weekly thing. It's different if you're on the 53-man roster, you have a contract that either expires at the end of the league year, which is March, or it rolls over to the next year. So that's what a futures contract is.
And there's like almost no for the team, it doesn't you're not paying anything. It doesn't cost it. Like it's kind of like
you've got a 90-man roster to fill. Yep. Some of these guys are going to get cut later in the offseason.
Yeah.
Now, for the record, the 5 practice squatters who were unceremoniously not signed to futures contracts: John Hightower, former 5th-round pick, Keyshawn Johnson, of course, the Hall of Fame wide receiver. Is he a Hall of Famer?
No, Keyshawn's not a Hall
No,
of
he's
Famer.
not. Sorry. The former number 1 overall pick. Luke Juriga, Casey Tucker. I'm sure we haven't seen the last of Casey Tucker. And Raekwon Williams. There you go. Who of those 5, Zach, do you think is the most likely to come back to the Eagles at some point ever in any capacity?
Luke Juriga. He seems to be like, if you need someone to snap the ball in practice, call Luke.
I was going to go Casey Tucker just because, he always comes back. But you might be right. All right.
I want to give a shout out to one listener, M. Kaz.
You're looking off screen as if you are being held hostage by M. Kaz, and this is part of the deal.
I'm trying to find. I wrote it down. So this is someone who before Christmas sends me a message, wants to buy a book, for a Christmas present, and says that
what book did he want to buy?
Underdogs, the Philadelphia Eagles' emotional road to Super Bowl victory, and says that if I win Swooper, he'll be happy to pay me twice. And I didn't think I read the sentence. I didn't think anything of it. And so anyways, Monday or Tuesday, whenever it was, I get a Venmo text alert for $30, and I'm like, wait, what is this? And he said he was a man of his word.
Wow, big flex.
And I immediately sent him the money back because I can't accept the money for winning Super Forecasting. But I'm like, I will mention you on the pod. And then he was
should have kept the money, but sent him another book.
No, he was generous enough to say that he will donate that money to a charity of my choice. So I sent him
the charity was
Philadelphia Futures,
Syracuse,
which goes
boosters?
to Philadelphia Futures, which goes to send its Philadelphia public school students to college and supports them, and it's a cause that's very close to my heart. So So anyways, I want to give him a shout out because that was a really nice gesture that had to do with Swoopers Forecasting.
Well, that's good because somebody mentions Cameo in the chat, and I think it's possible we might be dipping our toes in that bad boy. We'll see. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Birds with Friends. Some good conversation, some Quack to the Future, some jokes, and we'll be back next week. Probably two episodes next week. Hopefully we'll have Shield back in the saddle. He can give us all his thoughts on where we ranked Christian Ellis versus Mac McCain. I'm sure he's got big thoughts on Deion Kane, so excited to hear from him. For Sheil and Elijah and Marissa and Zach, I'm Bo. Thanks for listening. And as always, we love you.